On this episode of Choose People Love Pets, I sit down with one of the most influential leaders in veterinary medicine, Dr. Eleanor Green. From becoming the first female dean at Texas A&M College of Veterinary Medicine to helping launch the Lyon College School of Veterinary Medicine, Dean Green shares her journey through leadership, innovation, and the future of veterinary education. Join us to find out what it's like to be a dean as we talk about culture, adaptability, AI, and what it really takes to lead people well in a rapidly changing profession. I'm your host, Dr. Brianna Armstrong, and this is Choose People, Love Pets. Dr. Green, I have so many questions about what it's like to be a dean, and especially about your experience helping build the Lyon Veterinary School. But before we get into that chapter, I'd love to take a step back. When did you first realize that pursuing a dean role in veterinary medicine might be part of your path?
Well, interestingly, I never pursued a dean's role. In fact, I never pursued an administrative role. They sort of came to me and I made choices. And I think that's one thing that we do in our careers is prepare ourselves for opportunities and then take one. The deanship at Texas A&M was an opportunity for me that I didn't think I could pass up.
Did you intentionally pursue leadership roles? Like when you were starting out as a practicing veterinarian, were you thinking to yourself, like, I want to be doing more than just practicing medicine? Or were people encouraging you along the way? How did that look for you?
Well, basically, all I ever really wanted to be was a really good equine veterinarian. That's it. That was my goal. I didn't have my sights set on any leadership roles per se. I mean, I guess I felt like I would try to do as much as I could, but I didn't really plan any leadership roles. At the university, I found myself being the person that people would come to with problems. When the opportunity came for a leadership role, I felt like it was my obligation to take it because only from there could I make a difference. It's very difficult in any large organization or bureaucracy of any kind for a single person to make a lot of change where they are. They can make suggestions, but they don't really have the power. And as a leader, you really can effect change much more readily. And so I found it a very fulfilling place to be in leadership.
What kind of things were you seeing needed?
Many things. One is how people were treated. It's easy for people to get lost in the shuffle, especially techs. And so I think you find yourself being an advocate for people to have a better situation wherever they are, and whether it's faculty or staff or students, that you are the one who really can make their lives better. If you really focus, I think leaders make the lives of the people in their organization better, and that's what their goal should be. And that's what my goal always was.
Do you feel like you knew how to lead as you were stepping into those leadership roles?
Never. I think we all no. I think you have to learn along the way. And I never felt prepared for any position I took. I know that they say that women especially are reluctant to take a leadership role until they feel 100% ready. And I never felt 100% ready, but I did learn on the way.
What were the experiences that most shaped your leadership philosophy that you took with you as you grew as a leader in the industry?
I think you have to have basic principles about who you are. And the most important decision that you ever make in life is who you're going to be. And who you are is made up of your choices, and your choices are made up of your character. And all of that leads to the behaviors that you display. And so I think that when you base your life on integrity and trying to have character and trying to do the right things, I think leadership just unfolds from that intent.
I think as someone who is thinking about, like, where do I want to go in my career? When I think about being a dean, it seems very overwhelming. And it also seems very like I have no idea what that actually looks like. So maybe you can break down for me and the listeners, like, what's it like to be a dean? What kind of skills do you need? What does the day-to-day actually entail? Like, tell me, maybe we can start there and then kind of unfold how you got there.
I think if you're in any role, but especially a leadership role, you really have to have a positive attitude and optimism. Culture starts at the top. And the culture that you create as a dean infiltrates the whole place, whether you want it to or not. And so you have to be very mindful of what the culture is that you're trying to create. And all that is found out in
Mm,
integrity, character, and all the reasons that you have to try to do the right thing in everything you do. And I think that's the basis of all leadership is integrity, doing the right thing, having character, and thinking about others. You can't think about yourself. You have to think about others. Now, don't get me wrong. If you don't take care of yourself and you're not healthy, you can't help anyone else. So I don't mean
right.
you don't take care of yourself, but you do put others first and you think about what their needs are. And I think that's the basis of leadership. So how do you create a culture? I think again you have to start with your own attitude and have a very
Mm,
positive attitude because there are a lot of problems in leadership. You're faced every day. And if you can let yourself, you live in the ditch. It's very easy to
mm,
let yourself live in a ditch and be overwhelmed by all the problems. But every problem is solvable if you go at it with the right attitude. I know one practice that I had was every morning on the way to work, I took inventory of my life. And
wow.
what I mean by that is that I really focused on the good. I focused about on all the good things that were in my life, not only in my position, but my family and my personal life and my horses and everything else. And then that lets me step out of the car to go into the building in the right frame of mind to help others with their problems. But if I come in loaded with my own problems, I'm not going to be as strong to help others with theirs. I have to be a good listener. And that means really listening. That doesn't mean just hearing the words. That's trying to understand. What is that? First seek to understand and then be understood. That applies so strongly to leadership. And you can't make all the decisions yourself. You have to gather input. One other thing that I did as a dean was I challenged my team to challenge me. I told them that their job was to challenge me. And if they didn't challenge me, they weren't doing their job. And of course that's in a positive light. I mean, they don't need to call me names or anything, but they do that you need to create a transparent environment where people feel free to bring issues to you so that you can solve them. Because if you're unapproachable, you're not going to solve the
Mm.
problems because you're not going to know what they are. But if you encourage people to share them and you have an open, transparent environment, again, that's going to infiltrate throughout and make a much healthier organization for everyone in it.
I love everything you're saying about like how you bring yourself to work as a leader is going to shape how the people around you are responding and the kind of culture you're going to build. And then the second piece of collaborating and like having a space that has psychological safety so that people feel able to bring things to you and challenge you in a real way that'll help ultimately help the thing you're running succeed. Who taught you these principles? I mean, not everybody knows that they to think about things that they're grateful for on their way to work and like to show up in the right attitude and mindset. Where did you get that kind of foundational leadership training?
It started with my father. My father was a surgeon. And
Oh,
he
wow.
he was absolutely a human surgeon, and he was absolutely incredible. I mean, he was, the most unbelievable role model, and integrity was at the heart of everything he did, and so was compassion and caring. And I used to go with him on rounds to the hospital or go with him to visit his patients or be in his office with him, and I'll never forget the sense of calm in the patients when he entered the
Wow.
room. And the minute he entered, you could just feel it. And he cared, and he even his voice and the way he cared for them. And it was so clear that he was sincere. And our house was filled with gifts from patients all the
Hmm.
time. And they came in every day from grateful patients. And so I saw that. And then I actually, you asked earlier, when did I decide to be a leader? I was always interested in leadership. And in fact, a textbook that I read just on my own is I bought a psychology textbook because it just interested me. And so I've always been
Mm.
interested in people. And then I started taking leadership courses. I read every book I could find on leadership and I did courses. I went to Harvard's management development program, which was incredible. It was I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 weeks, but it was immersive. It was all problem based. They gave you two notebooks this deep. It was all problem based, and they went through a lot of issues that you would see in academia. I was the only veterinarian. It was people from all over the country from different walks of academic life. And I think that's another thing that's important is to enrich your life with people outside your sphere. And then you can bring those lessons into your sphere. And so that was wonderful. My husband at the time also worked for Monsanto. And as a corporate entity, they had a lot of leadership training for their people, and the spouses got to come for free. And so I went to every single one, and that was high level. So, yes, I studied leadership almost as a hobby, but it was very enjoyable for me.
You were my dean when I was in
Yes.
veterinary school. And one of the things that I remember you saying at one of the, you would always come and like talk to the students. And I feel like, I don't know what it's like at other colleges, but I felt like we saw you a lot, which I thought was awesome. And one of the things you said was that you didn't get into vet school the first time, so you'd apply 2 times. That's a core memory for me when you said that. And I even have told several of my colleagues and also upcoming generations of veterinary students that whenever they didn't get in their first time, I was like, our dean had to apply multiple times. You can do this. And so what was that experience like for you? At that time, were you thinking about how you wanted to impact the profession at the volume that you've done this far? Like what was early Eleanor like at that time with her leadership and your thoughts about the industry?
Well, I grew up with horses. That's all I ever wanted to do was horses. And my father was a surgeon. I couldn't think of a better way to combine medicine and horses than veterinary medicine. And as I mentioned, all I ever wanted to be was a really good equine veterinarian. When I
Yeah.
applied, the times were very different back then. I was one of 4 women in a class of 100 students.
Wow. Oh my gosh, have they changed?
Well, it was. In fact, my interview questions were very different than they are today, and you'd be amazed by some of them. But there were things,
What were they?
well,
Give me one.
some of the most staggering ones were, is there something wrong with you that you're a woman and want to be a veterinarian? And
No.
yeah, and even things like, well, how are you going to handle a 2,000-pound bull? And don't you want to have a family? It was very much phrased that
Wow.
way. I'll leave that interview for a minute and fast forward to a comment that I think was, again, very impactful in my life. I chose to not wear that on my sleeve. I recognized it as a sign of the times, and I recognized it as my responsibility to do my best to show that women could be good veterinarians and not to fight it, not to tell people they're wrong, but just to show them what women can do in veterinary medicine. And that's always been what I've tried to do. When I was at University of Missouri, the president of the American Veterinary Medical Association came to our home for dinner one night, and he, in a very vulnerable moment, said, I have to tell you, I did not think there was a place for women in veterinary medicine. Now, this is the president of the AVMA, but let me tell you what he said. He said, I know how hard I work. I know how hard my wife works, keeping the home and raising the children. I didn't see how any one individual could do both. Now, see how powerful is that? So it's not, is that discrimination or not? I think it's a lack of understanding. I didn't ever feel discriminated against. I felt that it was a lack of understanding. And then the next statement that he said, which I've carried with me ever since, he said, until I met you. And
Wow.
see, I mean, does that just say something in this world that, he didn't understand, and a lot of people don't. And that's true of many things we see today. People don't understand, so they object. But if we can help them understand, their minds can be changed. And his was. And so I feel like I had the gift and the opportunity to make some change at a time when women were not welcome, let's say. I did have, several other events. I was told I couldn't be a director of a program because a woman couldn't handle a leadership role like that. And, I have a lot of experiences along the way because fortunately or unfortunately, I was on the cusp of the wave. So every level I reached was still a pushback level because people didn't understand. So I was the first woman department head at the University of Tennessee. I was the first woman department chair at the University of Florida, and I was the first woman dean at Texas A&M. So you do blaze trails, and I didn't do that on purpose. I just did it because that's where I was in my life.
How did you, with all of the volume of people and ideologies at that time that were saying, like, you can't do this, what were you telling yourself? How did you keep yourself moving in the direction that you knew you were headed? I feel like it would be really easy because there's smaller things that shift people and keep them from doing the things that they want to do today. And you were overcoming some pretty powerful societal norms at that time. What advice can you give to people in the world that we're in today from what you've experienced to help them move forward when they're getting pushback?
One of my favorite cartoons is a Gary Larson cartoon, and it's this picture of Satan and his sidekick, and he's sitting there, and behind him are all this lava and these people shoveling lava. And there's this one guy in this with this little wheelbarrow full of lava that he's pushing in front of Satan and his sidekick and the cat, and he's whistling and having the best time. And Satan says, "We just can't get through to that guy." And it's, that just resonated with me because I think, if just don't wear it on your sleeve, just do a good job and doors will open. And they really do. I think sometimes we hurt ourselves by trying to push too hard. I don't know what the right balance is because you can't not push, but you can push too hard. And so if there's a way to just show who you are and what you can do and somehow get an opportunity to demonstrate your talent.
What do you think made you different? Like, what do you think people were? What if somebody's like, okay, I want to be Eleanor, I want to be Dr. Green and be the kind of person that leaders who would have never considered someone like me before are all of a sudden thinking very differently? What kind of things would you say?
Well, I would say that you need to be who you are. Number one, I've said that before. And you need to base your life on your character and your integrity. And then you just need to do the right thing. When you do that, doors open. They really do. And it's that simple. They may not open on the day you want them to, but if you just keep plugging, don't give up, be positive. I always said that veterinary medicine it's find a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I've never worked a day in my life. And
Yeah.
maybe that attitude helped me some too. I've never had one day in my profession I didn't love going to work. And even in these circumstances, so I think it's pretty much, and I don't feel like Pollyanna. I didn't ignore it. I just didn't let it get me down. There's something that I learned about that I studied a lot and now I'm lecturing on, and it's the adaptability quotient. And I don't know how many people have heard about that, but if they haven't, they ought to look into it. And
Can you tell me about it?
yeah,
I don't know that I've heard that term before.
well, if there is proof now that if you are adaptable, which means and your adaptability quotient is high, you are happier in your work, you're more productive. And if your organization has a better culture and is more productive and the bottom line is higher and everything's better if the adaptability quotient is high, it's measurable and it's changeable.
What is it?
Well, it's learning to be adaptable. There are different ways like you approach change with optimism and not with fear. And you bring others along, you try new things, you don't say no, you're open to change, and you get a mindset about that. And that's something that really, I think, unwittingly drove me was I was adaptable. And I think that's I actually, in the Lyon School, I added that as a core competency was adaptability. And we were going to go, I don't know if they're going to now, but we were going to teach adaptability to the students. There's a difference. People say, well, what's the difference between adaptability and resilience?
I was going to ask, yeah.
Adaptability is a mindset going in. It's receptivity to change. It's, it's whereas resilience is something bad happens and you get through it. It's reactive, not proactive. And the adaptability is preparing yourself and training yourself to be adaptable, learn about it. And I think maybe that mindset helped me a lot. And I know that mindset would help others too.
I was going to ask you if you think it's trainable, but and clearly you do because you're building a whole course around it. As a leader, I want team members that have a high adaptability quotient. That sounds like something that would be perfect for a team that can handle whatever comes in the door. What are some ways that you can teach that? Like, what were you designing in the program?
If you go online, there are several different ways to do it. There's a gentleman named Dr. Ayman Tafani, He actually spoke at the Mars Summit this year. Well, I recommended him to speak on this subject at Mars
Yeah.
Summit because I thought that was important. But he is from Singularity University, and
Oh, cool.
he is the one that I heard speak, and he and his wife created Adaptability University. Now, it's not a university, but it's a course, and he's got a series of courses. So if you go online, you can find him. And then also you can just go online and find resources and read them. And if I were in a practice with adaptability, I might send one to his course, which would be expensive, but that one person can come back and share with everyone else.
What
Well,
do you mean?
if you have clinical rounds in your practice, or if you
Uh-huh.
more likely lunch and learns where you have maybe some educational opportunities in the practice, a speaker comes in for a
Yes.
week or whatever, but you don't need a speaker necessarily. You just need to maybe read the book on adaptability and then come and discuss it in the practice. And then if everybody in the practice gets to understand that, and then you can remind each other of that along the way and make it a very positive thing where it's a reward. You don't get criticized for not being adaptable, but you get rewarded for being adaptable.
I think I intuitively know that mindsets are something that you can shift and
Yeah.
change over time, but I don't think it's easy. I wonder what what veterinary medicine might look like if more of us
Oh.
had training in that. You've had leadership roles in multiple different colleges, and maybe this will bridge us into Lyon College. What is your process when you're coming into a college and you are taking over leadership? How do you get buy-in from the faculty that is there currently and start to figure out like what your agenda is going to be, like what things you do actually want to change, and maybe you know that before you go in. Can you talk me through what that looks like?
Well, um, you study about the program before you go in and learn as much as you can, every way you can, whether it's all online or if it's in your interview or if it's talking to people. So you learn. And then when you get there, you listen, and then you listen some more. And so
Oh, wow.
you create this culture of listening where people have a voice. Everybody has to have a voice to feel a part of it. And I know that there are some times when you go into a new organization and there are some people who are maybe on the outside, and there are people who want to keep them on the outside. And it'd be easy to just walk in and say, yep, they're outside people. But you know what? They might not be. And I've always tried to keep a very open mind when I enter a new organization to really listen, find out what people think, why they think it, and then assess what is really true in my mind and what needs to evolve and change that can again make an organization better for everyone in it.
Uh,
I think the other thing that's extremely important in a leadership role, and when you go into a culture and into any organization, new or after having been there for a while, is to learn to address conflict. There is conflict, and at Texas A&M we had the mediation training, which was really fun. But I've had a lot of conflict resolution training, and I think that if you try to bury conflict, you're going to end up with a sick organization. I was in one organization that there was this prevailing sense of distrust, and I could not figure it out. But it was because
mm.
nobody addressed any conflict.
How'd you figure that out?
Well, well, it didn't take long to figure that one out. But there were things. It doesn't really take long, but there were things like I would walk down I try to walk a lot and walk around the halls and try to meet with people individually, and so if I heard suggestions by people of something that needed to be done, I would walk around and ask a bunch of others, "What do you think about this?" And they all said, "Oh, yeah,
Mm.
good idea." And then I was in a department meeting and I said, "Well, look, I hear you all wanna do this, let's do this." And you would have thought that I'd told them we were gonna fire them all. I mean, they were livid. And I said, "Well, wait a minute, what?" And so what I learned from that is that you can't go to somebody's office and say, "What do you think about this?" Disagree with you until there's trust.
Oh,
See? And so so I said, wait a minute. I hear you. We're not doing this. I made a mistake. I listened to you. I heard some people saying that. I thought it's what you want. It's clear that you're not. We're backing up and starting over. So that's another thing a
mm.
leader needs to do is say, I was wrong. And you have to say you were wrong a lot. So again, it's spending the time to really figure it out. And you can figure it out by talking to people. You can figure it out by being hit in the face with something like that. Based. And so it just takes time, but you just keep listening and keep working. You really have to get people's input into what they really want to do to make change. For example, the
Mm.
executive team at Texas A&M, and they really learned pretty quickly that, we could make a lot of change if we just brought those ideas together. And then we talked about it so that because, a change that might be good for one department might be terrible for another. So do
Mm.
you impose change on those that it's not? Do you allow everybody to make their own changes? Or do you have sweeping change that you hope is good for everyone? But you just have to sort through all that. And that's through a lot of exploration, a lot of listening.
What's something people don't realize about how decisions actually get made in that kind of a structure?
Well, I think in every organization, people will think that the dean makes all the decisions or that the president of the university makes all the decisions. I think that's just natural. One reason for that is that people are busy and they go about their
Mm.
lives and they don't spend a lot of time in their day studying what happens. But there is an inherent distrust of administration, I think, and that's something that needs to be overcome as well.
Where do you think that comes from?
Well, sometimes there are reasons to have an inherent distrust of administration. I've been in administrations before that were pretty tough. And so I learned some of what I learned what not to do.
Was there a decision you had to make as a dean that kept you up at night? Something that was especially challenging?
I think the most challenging decisions are those that affect people. If you have a tenure decision, and something along that line where it's not going to fall on the side of the faculty member. Those are very, very tough. And I say that because I think faculty are the center of the universe and as our staff. Everything that happens in a university, faculty do. And so I value them very highly. And it's very difficult to have but not work out for someone. And yet, I think that's another thing that's enormously important. Or even with staff, I always, this is a little mantra I developed on my own that I kind of liked. One is
Yeah.
give everybody the chance to succeed. And if they don't succeed, it's on them because you work with them, you ask them, you encourage them, you do everything to help them succeed. And I know I had a faculty member one place that I was talking about the performance review. And I said, look, what do you want to do next year? What are your plans for next year? And this person said, I'm going to retire in about 5 years, so I don't want to start any new projects. Now, what do you do about that? It was I was staggering to me hear that. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, Mary Lou Retton started gymnastics and won a gold medal in less than 5 years. Surely we can start a project. That was a great thing to say, but it sort of came out. But again, what can we do to help you? It's not
Yeah.
what can we do to make you feel bad about that, but what can we do to help you? And then I think the other thing is that some people there are really good jobs and really good people. They aren't always really good fits. And so the other mantra that I use a lot is that our number one choice is for you to be happy here. Our number two choice is for you to be happy somewhere else. And the third and only unacceptable choice is for you to be unhappy here. And I think when you tell people that, I mean, I've had that conversation with staff, I've had that conversation with people, and we want you happy and we want you here. But if you can't be happy here, we want you happy somewhere else. What can we do to help you? And I've had staff members in the past who left and then they came crawling back and begged and said, I just didn't realize how good it was here. May I please come back? And we said yes, and it turned out to be one of the best staff members we ever had.
Wow.
Sometimes you have to help people shape their attitudes. I talked about trying to stay positive myself. But sometimes we have to help other people shape their attitudes and focus on what's important. So it's a lot. It's a lot to be a leader because you have to deal with an organization. You have to deal with every individual throughout and try to help everyone be successful. And you have to lead up and lead down. So you have
Yeah.
to add a cross.
When I think about how, I run a hospital with 20 people,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have an operations team that I run the hospital with, and then I have my team and my hospital manager that I run that with. But when I think about that compared to what you're doing, which is running an entire academic institution and everything you just explained about the up and the down and the across that you're trying to juggle and finesse, and you're doing that in a way that I do on a hospital level, which is really giving people the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves and meet our expectations. And then if they can't, then I feel the very same way. I'm like, I want you to be happy here. That's number one. But if it's if that's not gonna happen, then I'm gonna feel better if you're happy somewhere else. Like, that's the best thing for you, and I don't wanna stop that. But thinking about doing that at the scale at which you're doing that
Yeah.
and not getting overwhelmed, how do you balance all of that? It seems so daunting because
Yeah.
I'm over such a smaller community. Talk me through what that looks like.
Well, I think there are two pieces of that. One is the philosophy, and you're creating the culture that you want. And that is that high performers want to work with high performers. High performers don't like working with low performers, and low performers don't like working with high performers. So if you don't hold people to standards and if you don't hold them accountable, guess who leaves? And so, it's not, you have to, the way that I dealt with the people part of this, which it's always agonizing if you feel like you're not doing everything you can for a particular person, you have to think about the whole. And you have to think about the fact that if they're not going to raise their standards, you're not helping the organization to let them stay. You are helping the organization to let them find something more appropriate for them because this obviously isn't the job for them. So that's one thing. And so when you see those kinds of successes where the organization all elevates, and when someone leaves and the organization is better because of it, it sort of gives you some support, some supporting yourself in this. And I think the other thing is you surround yourself with people better than you. And you
Mm.
don't do everything, for heaven's sakes. You surround yourself with people better than you, and then they do their wonderful jobs and buy into this culture. And then it dominoes to from the dean to the department heads and associate deans and to the sections and to the faculty. You can watch it just cascade in a
Mm.
wonderful way, and that's very fulfilling to see that happen.
I love the idea of it's always collaboration and you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
And I think that your perspective around like it is about the organization becomes, I mean, it's important in a hospital setting, but even more so when you're talking about an entire institution. If I'm thinking about, do I want to pursue being a dean one day, but I want to understand, like, I know what my day to day looks like as a hospital owner and medical director. What does the day to day look like for you as a dean? Like, and in a high level way where I could be like, okay, is this something that what are the things that I need to know that you're doing on a daily basis that would be like a make or break of whether or not I would want the job?
Mhm. Well, first of all, you'd be very good, and
Oh.
you were an outstanding student, been an outstanding veterinarian since then. You already have leadership qualities, and if it's something that to which you aspire, I would encourage you to do it. Um,
Thank you.
Yeah, you really should if it's something you wanna do. If it's, what does my day look like, and then what should you do to prepare yourself? Okay, my day,
Yes.
here's the thing as, the dean I found is that I had no time for me. I would try to set aside some time to maybe write an article or do something that I wanted to do, and next thing you know, there's a crisis in the hospital, or, there's something that goes wrong, or we have a student problem, or something, and you find yourself with the day filled and even
Mm.
tried to carve out just a little bit for you. So it's very busy. It's always busy. And especially when you consider that you're running the college, you're trying to keep the curriculum going and you're trying to get admissions right and you're dealing with student issues, which by the way, associate dean does more than you do, but you are still backup for that. And it ends up coming to you and donors. I mean, there's a ton to do with donors. And
The fundraising is a
the
big part of it, is my
fundraising
understanding.
huge, and I didn't think I could do it because I don't like to ask people for money, but the thing is you don't have to. What you do is you build relationships and you tell them what you're doing, and they
Mm.
know, and people with resources want to give money to a winner, to something they believe in, and so if you can give them an idea of what you're trying to do and they believe in that, then they'll volunteer. I mean, the biggest gift we ever got in the veterinary school was 25 million, and
Wow.
we never asked for it. And we put him on our advisory council and let him know our vision and what we were trying to get done. And he called us to our office one day. In fact, it was really interesting. We hadn't had a day off in, 2 years. I shouldn't say that because that's not what mental health does. So it's okay. But we were gonna go on horse circuit, and we were getting ready to go, and this gentleman calls and says, I'd like to talk to you next Tuesday. Would that work? And we said, oh, God, that's when we're leaving. And we said, we'll be right there. So anyway, and he said, I'd like to give you 25 million to fund the equine initiative. And so he built that whole complex, which is
At
unprecedented.
Texas A&M.
Yeah, the unprecedented
It's gorgeous.
over there. It is gorgeous.
Yes.
But he did that. And so fundraising, I won't say it's easy. I'm saying that there are a lot of people that have resources, and what can they do with their resources? They can spend it, they can invest it, or they can do something of value with it and give it away. And it's one of the and so there are a lot of people that are looking for something to invest in. So fundraising for me was really, really fun because it's relationship building. That's all it is. Yeah. It is a responsibility of a dean as well. It's something that, but you would be good at that too. I mean, you're a great at relationship.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you remember we did the
Was it Myers?
ENTJ?
Yeah,
The Myers-Briggs ones.
Myers-Briggs, yes.
Yes. Do you remember what yours is?
I remember very well what mine is. Yeah. Do you want to know?
What? Yeah, what is it?
Well, mine it's an E for sure. It's an N for sure. And I'm on the border of the TF. And then I'm a really high J. So I'm an expert and I'm a creative thinker and I'm care about people and I'm organized.
So I'm also an ENTJ.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know I think we were like doing orientation together or something. And I found out that you were an ENTJ and I was an ENTJ. And I was like, do I need to be a dean one day?
Yes, you do.
I was so inspired. I am so inspired by you. And
thank you.
And
I'm inspired by you. So this is right
thank you.
At you.
I want to contrast. So I like hearing about, okay, you're handling a lot of like real conflict and crisis things in the academic hospital and also thinking through the curriculum. This is like in your deanship when it was established and you came in, you got buy-in, you were listening to everyone, and then slowly over time made changes that made sense for the college based on the kind of culture you were trying to set. I love all of that. Building lots of relationships and networking. I'm sure you set aside a ton of time for traveling for that. Do you travel a lot as a dean?
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
okay.
You have to. Most of it, quite frankly, is within the state, but you also need to represent the school nationally where you can. So things like the Mars summits and the AAVMC meetings, and I always went to the AAEP meetings just because I had to keep my equine roots going. So there's a good bit of travel.
Yeah, and you were sitting on multiple boards while you were doing that, and from the board of director work I've done, it's if you're for the listeners, if you're considering being on a board of directors, it's not as much work as you think. Like it's a couple meetings, maybe once a month, maybe a few times a year. And then you're in some boards, you can like make big impacts, and others it's more like keeping up with what's going on and making decisions as they come up. So if you're thinking about board of director stuff, like totally doable with a full-time career, clearly. You were saying you have no time as a dean and you were on boards and things like that. And then I want to shed light on, okay, where I'm going with this is I'd love to contrast this with what's like founding a school as a dean, because I think that's something that you just embarked on and we're working on. I know you just stepped down recently, but I would love to hear what it's like to found a college as a dean. But before we do that, when you were at Texas A&M, as our dean, you started the VEA program, the Veterinary Entrepreneurship Academy, which is where I started my company when I was in vet school, and it was just an amazing program. For people who don't know, that particular program isn't running anymore.
Sadly.
Do you know of any programs that are like that today?
I don't know any that were specifically like that. I think it needs to be done again. But,
it was such a good...
I mentioned early about getting outside of our sphere. I had the opportunity to go to Singularity University for their executive program. Singularity University is not accredited because they don't want to be, because that slows them down too much.
Can you tell me more about Singularity and like what is it? I think there's people that probably don't know what that is.
Well, Singularity University is in California, and it's made up of all these forward-thinking faculty that do these amazing things and amazing talks, and they really drive the knowledge forward. And they have different programs, and One of them is exponential medicine, which is what Adam Little went to, and that actually
Oh, yeah.
set him on his path of innovation. And so I went to that, but he also went to this, and I also went to this, to the
Yeah. Adam's going to be on the podcast soon.
oh, he's
Yeah.
terrific. But the
Yeah.
Singularity Executive Program, if it's not cheap, but if anybody has the opportunity to do that, I would do it. It was just under 100 people. I think there might have been about 80 people, and there were probably less than 20 that were U.S. citizens, and they were from all
Wow.
walks of life. And it looked at global issues and what's the future in global issues. And we had everything from astronauts who talked, and we had people talk about
Wow.
healthcare, and we had people talk about the economy and business. And, it is so mind expanding. It's unbelievable. And so then the exponential medicine was totally focused on medicine. Daniel Kraft put that on. And he brought in all these forward thinking people and talked about the future of medicine. And so I went to that and got totally inspired again. And actually, I've been to every single one of them since, and I've actually gotten to speak twice, which was, the only veterinarian. So I was like, yo ho. And
Wow.
so that was pretty fulfilling. But that's where the idea for the Veterinary Innovation Summit was born, is because at that
Mm.
we in this profession were not looking into the future. We were not looking around corners. We were not thinking about the fact that we live in this exponentially changing world, not in an island unto itself, and that we're going to be affected by it. And this Adam Little, helped me with that at the very beginning too. So I just very thankful to him. I hired him as the director. I created an office of innovation and hired him as a director for 25% time, and then we started the Veterinary Innovation Summit. Boy, I'll tell you, there were some of the reviews were incredible. We had one, and we read the written reviews that said it was like a Disney wow.
It was.
I said I was so inspired that I wrote a business plan on the plane on the way home.
Oh my gosh.
And the networking was amazing. And so at that time, we weren't really thinking about the future. And now you see it all the time. And I think our profession has really grown because of that one thing
I
and
think so too.
nothing else like it. I don't know. That's something that really inspires me is thinking about the future. And I got so turned on by Singularity University and its approach, but also exponential medicine, next med, and then how can we translate that into veterinary medicine? And there's really good reasons for doing that. It's not a matter of thriving, it's a matter of surviving. Because if we
Mm.
make those changes, the rest of the world is. Our clients
Yeah.
accept different things, and if they can't get what they want from us, they're going to go somewhere else. So I think it's incredibly important for us to think about the world in which we live and how can veterinary medicine fulfill what this world needs as it changes so rapidly.
Yes, I really want to get your thoughts on where we're headed, but I plan that for later. So
Okay.
let's not get ahead of ourselves.
All righty.
Before we move forward, I want to know, how did you know Singularity existed? Where did your interest in tech and innovation start? Because I don't think most people don't know Singularity in veterinary medicine. Like, we don't know that kind of stuff exists. So how did you get that information and what got that spark in you for that kind of stuff in the beginning?
I learned about it from Adam. And as we created this first innovation summit, a lot of the speakers were from Singularity, and I just had to go.
So you went after the first summit.
Yeah,
I got it.
I think so.
Okay, cool.
And
Yeah.
then you also asked about Lyon and what I hope to create at Lyon College.
Mm-hmm.
I would still be dean at Texas A&M because I love that job and I love that position. I love everything about it. It was just the most fulfilling job I've ever had. But my husband got cancer. He's 6 years cancer free now, all good, maybe
Oh my
7
gosh.
years now. But
Congrats.
because of that, it dominoed into us moving to North Texas, and I stepped down and I was
Mm.
going to consult. And when I consult with Mark Cushing with Animal Policy Group, and he works with a lot of these schools who are getting accreditation, and so he was helping Lyon. And so one thing led to another, and they asked me to be their founding dean. All right, now here's why I did it. Lyon College is private, and so I've always been in land grant institutions, state funded, no problem. But the bureaucracy is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more oppressive in the state-funded schools, and you can just look in Texas and see that there's even government involvement in the university at this point, and Lyon is private, so it could be nimble and flexible, and so I
Mm,
always had this vision to create a veterinary school that reimagines, veterinary education. What does that mean?
yeah,
You look at the younger generation now, I mean, the days of the sage on the stage lecturing for 6 hours is over. It's just over. It's not effective, and
that's
besides
wild to think about.
it is, but in addition to that, we have so many other challenges like the rapid changes around us, and they say now that medical information doubles every 32 days.
Oh my gosh.
How can you teach that? You can't, and everybody wants to put more and more in their courses because there's more and more to put in, and yet, where do you stop? I mean, it can't be a 20-year curriculum. And so I think our goal is to let students be participants in their own learning. I mean, certainly they need to be guided, but it's got to be immersive. It's got to be active participation in learning, much more than just listening. And that can happen in
Mhm.
so many ways. It has to be technology enriched today. And if you look at, we've gone from the clinical skills labs where they're low fidelity. They're also, a lot of high fidelity simulations that can really enhance teaching that ought to be put in. And not only that, it helps decrease the use of animals needlessly in teaching. And
What's high fidelity
well,
teaching mean?
high fidelity, well, I'll tell you this. When I was at University of Florida in the Department of Large Animal Clinical Sciences, we had anesthesia in our department and we collaborated. We had a gentleman who had horses that we used as a client, and he was an anesthesiologist in the Health Science Center. And they had a simulation lab over there, a human patient anesthesia simulation lab. So they had a mannequin, and surrounding this mannequin were all of the instrumentation that you would have in a high tech surgical suite. And you could, through the computer, put in what you wanted to have happen. And so what we did, that's high fidelity simulation where it's
Okay.
highly instrumented. And so what we did was we split the students into two groups in anesthesia. We sent half of them to the simulation lab and half of them stayed home. And then we switched them. So both got both experiences. And we measured who learned more. Guess who learned more? Simulation. I mean, here to here, a lot more.
Wow.
And the reason is that if you're spending 2 weeks in anesthesia rotation, you're doing a lot of spays and some things and nothing goes wrong, what do you learn? And yet over
Mhm.
there, you could factor in VTAC, you could factor in respiratory arrest, you could factor in anything you wanted, malignant hyperthermia. You can factor in everything you want. And the
I didn't
students
even think about that.
they can
Yeah.
experience it. And so we need to create simulations for students to actually experience what they will see in practice. Now, the other one is virtual reality. The virtual reality is the extended realities. And you can create all kinds of learning activities through headsets and virtual realities and create learning opportunities for them there. I'll give you one example there at A&M, and you know this, you probably did this, the Second Life.
Mhm.
Did you have the Second Life?
It was a part of our program, yeah.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was. And so, disaster and emergency, response,
Mhm.
and every student had to take it, at that time, and they created disasters because you won't have a disaster every 2 weeks, and I
Yes.
remember there was this one scenario where there was this house with smoke coming out of it, and so if you wrote an exam and said, you're at a scene, there's smoke coming out of a house, this person wants to go in the house and get her dog, what would you say? No, don't let her in. Nobody in the class would miss that. But in this
Mhm.
scenario where you were immersed in it, this owner came up and said, my dog's in that house, I have to go get it. And no, you can't go in, it's dangerous. Yeah, but you have to know what this dog needs to me. It belonged to my son who died of leukemia. And I mean, and on and on and on with these stories. And finally the student said, okay, go, but go fast. And they went
Mhm.
in there and it blew up. Now, that student will never forget that scenario. Never.
Yeah.
But on a multiple choice exam, no, it's gone. And so I think and so the idea of reimagining education through immersion in technologies and simulations and active participation in your learning and peer-to-peer learning are all very important. And I also throw AI into that.
Yeah,
Most
tell me about that. What kind of stuff are we using for AI in our new school programs that are there's like 6 schools coming online soon.
yeah,
So they're They've got to be using it in a real way.
Oh, I hope they are. What we wanted to do was we talked to Covet, and I think OpenVet is another one. And there's several different companies that would be very good in schools to expose students broadly. But what
Yeah.
I wanted to do at Lyon was embed AI in everything we did, from
And you're on the board of directors for Covet, right?
Covet and OpenVet and LifeLearn.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. I use Covet at my hospital.
Yeah, and they're
And so I'm
terrific.
very familiar with that. Yeah, it's amazing.
But imagine a veterinary school where AI is not the driver, but is a co-pilot for admissions and for assessments and operations. And so you can assess individual students, you could assess courses, and you can assess the whole curriculum, and you can make meaningful change through data. And so I think we've got to use it that way. Plus, that the importance of AI in practice, although we haven't really adopted yet, and for good reason. There's still some glitches in it, and it's not like it's not ready for prime time for everything yet, especially diagnostics, but it's still being
Right.
used for diagnostics very well. But again, as an aid, not as the diagnostician, but as an aid. And I think that students, it's our responsibility to prepare students for the future. And I always say, it's not about career ready veterinarians, it's about future ready veterinarians. Because if you have a career ready veterinarian on day 2, they're out of date, right? And so we've
Yeah.
got to graduate them with this mindset of curiosity and continuing to be adaptable and flexible for change and to make the right choices in doing that. And so I think exposure to AI is very important in a veterinary school. I think they need to have courses in it. I think they need to see how it's used in the school. I think they need to use it themselves. And I think the idea of trying to fence students in is wrong. I
Mm.
think we've got to let them use it. And there are ways, I mean, we certainly need to overcome critical thinking, and you can actually use AI to stimulate critical thinking too, because you can let them use AI, and then you can let them critique what they got out of it. So
Yes.
see, so there
Yes.
are ways to stimulate critical thinking as well as proper use of AI, and I say proper use.
Yes, I've used AI to like interview people, and like you were talking about using it for admissions. I've helped grade interviews for Texas A&M admissions, and it is very difficult to stay objective and grade them when you've done like 8 in a row similarly, and like try very hard to be as objective as
Yeah.
possible. And so really great opportunity for AI to streamline and like, and they I mean they had like what 20 30 of us to try and make our biases wash that out as much as possible, but using AI for things like that. And then I love what you said about using it to critique the way we're thinking. I've used it to critique the way I've interviewed candidates for job positions
Yeah.
at my hospital. I'm like, I'd had it listen in, I used Covet to record, and then I'll ask, put it in ChatGPT and be like, where could I have been a better interviewer, right? Or what did I miss with this interviewee? Like, what were the red flags that I should pay attention to? So it's just like, it's amazing,
Yeah.
like how helpful it can be. One thing this makes me think of is you will hear people say that vet school does not set you up for the reality of the conversations that you're going to have in real life with pet parents, with financial constraints and life constraints, and the kind of like, I don't know, maybe like cultural things that people are bringing to the table, or just like physical disabilities that keep them from being able to give medications and things like that. What are you thinking about when you were building out Lions when it comes to this kind of like general consensus that or at least what I'm hearing is that people feel like they're just not getting that realistic conversation training?
Virtual realities. One thing that a lot of people do, and I know A&M does this and other schools do this too, is that they have actors who come in and they're the clients and they set up scenarios, and that's all well and good. And I don't think that we necessarily ought to stop doing that. But imagine how many scenarios you can build into virtual reality. And every
Yes.
single thing you're talking about, the Hispanic person who is stumbling on English, or the person who doesn't have the money, or even a homeless person. I mean, how
Mhm.
you can build in all those scenarios, so you can put in the diversity, you can put in real life situations, you can You can put in access to care struggles. You can put the spectrum of care in there. You can create any conversation you want. And guess what? You can create a library, and they can go back over and over and over and look at that too. And just like you with your interviews, how long would it have taken you to read up on how to do interviews and not have anybody
Yeah.
critiquing you when AI critiqued you? You got it like that.
Instant.
And
Yes.
so that's how, and the students can get immediate feedback and they can try again if it doesn't work out. So I really think it's the answer to the future of education. The other thing about it is that we were working with a gentleman named Shafi Ahmed, whom I met at Next Med and Exponential Medicine, who is from London. He has medical XR. He's a surgeon, a cancer surgeon, but he created this company called Medical XR. And in 2016, he did the first virtual surgery through the medical realities that reached, I don't know, 160 countries or something like that. And I don't,
Wow.
but a lot of people. And some of the people in developing countries had cardboard headsets. But whatever it was, we were working with him. I don't know if they'll continue that or not. I hope they do because
Hmm.
it's terrific. But you can also, with medical realities, you can take a case. So a real case comes in and you can enter all the data, all the imaging and everything, and then you can actually perform the surgery before you perform the surgery.
Have you heard Elon Musk say that like surgeons are like
Yeah.
robots are going to do surgery like 10 times? What do you think about that?
Well, maybe, but not for a while. Right now, I think we're going to have robotics is already happening. And
Hmm.
and there was just a recent report of somebody who did a surgery in another country and did it successfully and
Like remotely
remotely. Yeah.
did the surgery? Okay. Wow.
That can be done, and you certainly hope your internet connection is good. But see, there are downsides to that, and you gotta so technology has glitches, but it can also
Yes.
be incredible. Remind me to tell you about radiology when we get
Okay.
to this. But so I don't think that we're just going to turn surgery over to robots anytime soon. And
Hmm.
even if we use robotics and even if we use AI, it still has to be an assistant. It can't be the primary surgeon anytime in the near future that I can see about.
Yeah. What did you want to say about
Okay.
radiology?
So I had the opportunity with Shafi. I went over, I'm on a board in London too. And so I was in London. So I called him and he said, well, I can't get together tonight because I have an event. And then he called back about 5 minutes later and said, but you can go to this event with me. Now, let me tell you what this event was. It was all the radiologists in England. And it was like the
Wow.
heads of like our board. It was the head of the board, it was the head of the Radiology Association. It was all these researchers, it was all these radiologists, and I got to be there and listen to them. And so I asked them what they thought. These are just two take home messages that I got. There are a whole bunch of them, but we won't go through all of them. There were two really important take home messages. Is that, I heard a lecturer one time say that in human medicine, if you don't use AI for like a stroke, you're going to be liable because you can get those results so quickly. And that's a disease that you have to diagnose like that. And AI can help you do it like that and it'll save lives. And so, his comment was that you're liable if you don't use AI. Now, I asked the radiologist about that because I heard this guy lecture and I said, what do you think about that? And he said, maybe someday, but not now. He said, a lot of the trials that are done in controlled environments, it'll show a benefit, but in the real world, it's not controlled. And so what we found in the real world that it's not that accurate yet. It might be someday. And then another gentleman said, and one of the reasons it's not accurate is because we have no standardization of taking images. How about that?
Mm, yeah.
Once we get standardization of collecting images, they'll be easier to compare and AI will be more valuable. It is
That's
valuable.
going to be so hard across
I
species.
know.
Like,
I know.
yeah.
So that's the first thing I thought of. Well, that's great for people,
Humans. Yeah.
the different species we have. But it is one of the challenges, and it's one of the reasons that we can't totally rely on it, but we have to start using it. We really do.
Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. Was that both things or was there another one?
That was the 2, was,
Okay. Perfect.
standardization and look, what happens in a lab in a controlled environment doesn't always translate immediately, and I think we're all feeling that now, and we're a little bit scared of AI and diagnostics, But
Yes.
again, it's just like you critiquing, AI is still going to pick up things that we didn't think of. And so
Yes.
whether we throw it in first and then look at it and add and critique it, or whether we do our own diagnosis and throw ours in and ask, it doesn't matter what order you use, but it's going to find things we didn't think of.
Yes. Well, even like, I don't know why that's any different than my team. If I forgot, like, I had a nauseous
Yeah.
dog and I forgot I could also use on Dancitron instead of just Serenia every time.
Yeah.
And my team member reminds me that, like, why am not me, I love AI, but like, why is our industry so against like something that has that bank accessible to it at
Yeah.
all times at the instantly? Like, you don't have to rely on someone's memory. It's like it will push that out every time. I mean, it can make us such better doctors
Yeah.
as long as we're looking at it with a critical eye and like we would do with anything else.
We're
So,
very careful as a profession. And I'll say careful, you can say conservative. And I think we're reluctant to change in some ways. Now, we've made a lot of very beneficial changes. If you look at veterinary medicine now, and even 10 years ago, it's very different. So we do change, but we're still kind of slow on the uptake of new things. And I don't think we have to jump at everything that's shiny, but we certainly need to be receptive. I mean, things like telemedicine,
yeah.
it took,
Well, the regulation has to change before I think we can
does.
like fully adopt that. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. There are other things that we push back on, and this isn't a show about that, but things
Yeah.
the veterinary professional assistant. There's vehement
Yes.
pushback to that, and both of these things had exactly the same history in human health. No,
Mhm.
absolutely no. No telemedicine. It took 30 years to get where we are. And with telemedicine, I know my husband went to the doctor the other day. They asked him three questions: name, insurance, and do you want telemedicine? Three questions. And so
Wow.
they're there and we're not. I hope we get there because it's very valuable.
Do you remember, you know how like people used to say we're like 10 years behind human med? Do you think that's still true?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. The beauty, we are in the catbird seat because human medicine learns a lot from us. There's no doubt. I mean, look at osteoarthritis and even the
Right.
chondroitins and the different intra-articular therapies. A lot of them came from work on horses. But in reverse, there are so many things that they lead the way on, and we just kind of have a buffet that we can choose from and try. And
Yeah.
I think we have a great position to be able to leverage what is good of human medicine and what applies.
I'm thinking about like how much time you've spent in veterinary medicine and helping shape it. What it makes me wonder, what is something that you believed strongly really early on about veterinary medicine that you've since changed your mind about as you've watched
Well,
the industry unfold?
what have I changed my mind on? Well, I'll give you a couple examples of pushing change. I know
Okay.
that at Florida, um, I hired the first full-time acupuncturist as a
Oh,
full-time
wow.
faculty member. And he was from China. He had all his certificates there. He came to Florida and did a PhD. So he's a scientist and an acupuncturist, right? So I hired him. And you wouldn't believe the grief I got from the basic scientists. And they said it's witchcraft. And I said, look, if you can do a cesarean on a woman under acupuncture, there's something there. The issue is we just don't know how it works, and we're better to
Mhm.
find out than any university. And if we don't embrace it, it's going to continue to be perceived as witchcraft. And I think we have a responsibility to bring some of these things into an academic setting to show, do they work or do they not? And if they do, how do they work? And that advances
Mhm.
science, right? And so I've always liked to push things, I guess. Yeah.
You really have your fingers like in the forefront when you're in the positions that you're in. I mean, the things that you've made decisions on and decided to go for have changed the entire profession. The Veterinary Innovation Summit made a big difference for people's acceptance of technology. For a long time, people were like, "Oh, no one's using AI," but I think a lot more people are using AI than than we realize. And in veterinary medicine specifically, I don't know how quickly that would have actually happened had we not had a normalization of here are things that are coming. You need to learn about it and be ready and prepared. Well, so you brought in an acupuncturist. What else? What other big changes did you make?
Well, Texas A&M, first telemedicine full-time faculty member ever.
Oh yeah. Wait, that was Lori Teller, right?
Yeah,
Dr. Teller? Yeah.
and she
That
did
was a big deal.
Yeah, it really was. And so, and of course, she was charged to expose the students because I still feel that with telemedicine, a lot of times people are busy, and they may be interested, but they're kind of busy to do new things.
Yes.
And so if we can teach the students these new things like AI and like telemedicine and all these different technologies, if we can expose them to those, then they can deploy and help implement in the practices where they go. That also pertains to digital health, and it's one of the things that I hope happens. It's one thing I intended to have happen is have a lot of the digital technologies in our simulation lab too.
Mm.
The devices, a lot of devices, so they get really comfortable with device work so that when they go out, they'll use that more too.
I want to go back to your program that you were building out with Lyon School because this reminds me of like all the things we're talking about implementing or things that are like hitting the industry that we're using now as practitioners once we've graduated. Something else that I hear a lot about, even for myself, was that, and I went through the VEA program, okay, but I still felt like there was there's a huge gap in business and leadership education. Like, how do I actually run the hospital? And legally, veterinarians are the only ones still, not, I don't think in every state, but in most states that can own hospitals. Was that something that you were thinking about in the program? And like, where do you see that going with the academic professions? Yeah.
About whether veterinarians need to own hospitals, I'm not sure I get your question.
Well, that's an interesting question. So I would love to get your thoughts on that. But the business and leadership training that we need to
Oh,
do that successfully, we're not getting, or at least it wasn't a part of our fleshed out program. So I was curious if that was something that you were putting into the Lyon School.
yes. And I think, again, that's something, well, every curriculum is jammed and you have to figure out how to get it in there. But I think the learning will be faster and more efficient with hands-on and interactive and
That's a
just
good point.
student
Yeah,
at it. I think that you can do a lot of financial scenarios in the same way with simulations and all that would really help. The other thing is that if you, for example, we're working with a local shelter, which it's going to be our little local teaching hospital. It's primary care, wellness, and shelter medicine. And so what we're going to do is rotate the students through, and they will be actively involved in the business side and in all the different parts. So they'll rotate through that little hospital and learn. And I think that's what also would be great in some of these distributed model programs if the students were able to spend some time in the office,
Mm-hmm.
just taking care of cases. But, I think one of the problems with leadership and business training in veterinary students is they came there because they want to be veterinarians. If they wanted
Yeah,
MBAs, they'd have gone to business school. And so they're not always as receptive to that learning at that period
I
of their
see.
life. And so even if you provide it, I don't know that the uptake is always there because that's not what they want. They want to learn, they want to do surgery.
Maybe the angle is like the foundational skills that you need for leadership, like you and I were talking about in the beginning, which is
Yeah.
conflict management. How do you lead a
Yeah.
team? That's stuff that we do use on the day to day, even as associates. So maybe that, and that's something you talked about earlier with the adaptability quotient, like teaching people how to be able to communicate and lead a team and like go through the ebbs and flows of the day, whatever comes at your way. And that kind of training would set you up because there is the business side of the hospital, which is running the
Yes.
numbers and knowing the spreadsheets and how do you stay profitable and manage your inventory and all that stuff. But a lot of that stuff you kind of have to learn on the job with like what's going on in your hospital. 90% of it is people leadership.
Yeah, it is.
And you can use those skills as an associate in your day to day, even if you never want to be a leader. So maybe that's the end. That's how you get the buy in with the students,
All right.
is how I could imagine that working.
How about this? There are a lot of student clubs and they all have
Yeah.
leadership. What about training those leaders? Maybe you don't do the whole class, but maybe for those who are elected leaders in their clubs, that
Mm-hmm.
they receive some training in leadership so that they can better lead their club. And then there's a purpose to it, and it's an immediate purpose rather than just one day you'll have to know how to, keep up with your inventory. So it
That's
makes
a good
it
idea.
immediate.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. I
Uh-huh.
love it. And that's a good point. Like they're not going to use it right now. So then is it valuable? But I guess, yeah, I mean, you could say that about a lot of the education, but how do you get them practicing it? Right. What surprised you when you started working on, you had been in established institutions leading up to This is your first founding of a college, right? Is my understanding.
Sorta. See,
Okay.
yeah, all right, let's back up. When
Okay.
when I was in practice, all right, again, all I ever wanted to do was equine, and I married a class
Mhm.
who was from a very small rural community in Mississippi, and he always wanted
Oh,
to
wow.
do it. And I said, "Let's go." I said, "Either you get it out of your system or we both love it." So we went to a small rural practice, a town of 300 people, and practiced. And it was a blast. I got a lot of stories about that. But so here's the thing. When at that time they were building a vet, they were just hired a dean to build a vet school at Mississippi State. And he visited every
Okay.
practice in Mississippi and he offered us jobs. We'd been
Oh,
in
wow.
for 4 years. Everything was going great. We were loving it. And so that was one of those things that we said, look, if we don't go, we'll never have this opportunity again. And if we go and don't like it, we can be back in practice in 2 weeks. So we went, we were like the fourth and fifth faculty member at this new school. So we did
Wow.
everything. And what a fulfilling experience that was. We developed the
Mm.
curriculum and the admissions procedures and, all the coursework. And I mean, every single thing that happens in a vet, design the facilities, everything that happens, we did. And here I was, you know, 20 something years old being thrown into that. And we had a lot of leadership training in that. We had a faculty development program that was an 8-week intensive course on leadership and conflict and team. And so I cut my teeth on that and on
Wow.
pushing the envelope and I carried that with me throughout. And so when the opportunity for Lyon came up, I said, been there, done that. Let's do it now, all these decades later, in a new, innovative world in an innovative way. So it was kind of a natural flow for me.
What were some surprising challenges with Lyon that you weren't expecting?
Well, I think one of the hardest things is to get the funding and assure that the funding's there.
How much money do you have to raise for something like that? Can I
Well,
ask that question?
millions, I mean, a whole lot. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And because you've got facilities, I mean, like not everybody's going to build Texas A&M, but that was 125 million a few years ago. So the facility
Yeah.
would be 80 million or so approximately. And then, there are a lot of costs. It's an expensive venture, even without a teaching hospital and much more with. I mean, there was one teaching hospital that recently came back with an estimate of like 450 million for a teaching hospital. So,
Jesus.
it's a lot of money. And so I guess the surprise is how do you get that money, especially from a small liberal arts school? I mean, so that was
Yeah.
quite the challenge, still is.
Are you cold calling people? Like what? How do you even?
Well, I think, if you go back to development, if you create a vision and, Arkansas, one of the things that was very fulfilling about Arkansas is that I never ran across anybody who said, we don't need a vet school. Now, a few veterinarians, I should say that, a few veterinarians said, we don't have a shortage, but we've got that, throughout our whole profession. But for the most part, people were very excited about it. And so I think that and there's certainly some wealth in Arkansas, and so the opportunity to get in front of people that have resources that find that this is something they want to get behind. So I think the philanthropy opportunities are good there.
There. What? We can not talk about this if you don't want to, but my next question was going to be like, what made you decide to step down and away from building out Lyons College?
Okay, that's real easy, and I don't mind talking about it. You're trying to recruit a team. And so one of the people that I was recruiting as an associate dean of academic affairs was Carolyn Henry, who was a former dean at University of Missouri, who wanted to be a dean again. So as I'm recruiting her, she says, well, my aspiration is to be a dean again. And I said, perfect. I said, I'm founding dean. Come on and get in line. And then when I step down, you would just flow into that position. I said, I can't, promise you that as a university. But I think you would, have the inside track to that without a doubt. And then she said things like, well, how long do you think you'll be there? Yeah. So, I mean, that wasn't a pushing question. It was a curiosity
Yeah.
question. And so I told her, I said, well, I'd like to be there till the first class goes in and potentially when the first class graduates, but then I'm ready to hand off the reins and hand the reins over. So the more we talked about it, I said, you know what? I found a dean. I'm the founding dean. Founding deans rarely stay forever. And if you find a talented, experienced person, I felt like it was better for the school to go ahead and get that fixed. And so I feel like part of my role as founding dean was to find the permanent dean, and I found them. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll help from the sidelines if y'all want.
Yeah. You're really like a connector as a dean, I feel like. You're just like bringing people together and
Yeah.
helping people bring on the next generation in a really collaborative way.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully.
That's the goal, the dream.
You can find talent in so many places. There was a veterinarian right there in Little Rock named Dr. Ashley Mounts, and she's just delightful. And she applied for the Associate Dean of Clinical Programs, and she was doing her master's in veterinary education just on her own time at LMU. And I met
Wow.
her, and she was just dynamite. And so we hired her immediately right out of practice to be Associate Dean of Clinical Programs, and she has so much talent. And so she's a very quick study, and so you can find great talent everywhere, and you can find it out of practice, out of government agencies, out of anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's something I've learned about through this podcast, just like how incredible people in our profession are.
They
They're
are.
so smart, they're so talented,
They
they're
are.
so versatile. I mean, it's just like it's unbelievable what
It
people
is.
such as yourself have accomplished and are accomplishing, and just like the winding road that you can take with a DBM degree is
Exactly.
just it's amazing. And I've even interviewed people that aren't DBMs, that are just veterinary professionals, they're technicians, CSCs. And I shouldn't say just veterinary professionals. I shouldn't say it like that, but they are veterinary professionals, and they're branching out, and they're really like doing some cool things to uplift the profession in a real way. And so I'm hoping to spotlight more of those people too. It's
Exactly.
just it's amazing.
It is, and I tell students, aspiring students, I tell them a couple things. So one of them is that veterinary medicine is one of the most fulfilling professions you can find on the planet. And you can do anything in this profession. If you want to make a lot of money, you can, if that's your goal. There are ways to make a lot of money in veterinary medicine. If you want to make a lot of impact, you can. If you want to be fulfilled every day, you can. If you want to work for the Peace Corps or the World Health Organization or when One Health or with Elon Musk or with whoever it is, you can find a place here. Or if you want to work in a rural community, you can. Or if you want to work in the beef industry, or it just doesn't matter. You can find something that suits you, and every personality as well.
Yeah, it drives me insane when I see people who are just stuck in complacency with their jobs when there's just the vast amount of opportunity for something different and within our industry. And I think part of it is not knowing what the options are. And that's something I'm hoping to shed light on with this podcast, is like including you and being a dean, and like that's something I haven't gotten to learn about at this level of depth, as far as like what that actually looks like. It's been very interesting to see. There's things that I have talked to people about that they've done that I like didn't even know was a possibility. So just really cool opportunities.
Yeah, I always told, I used to lecture to students about the different paths you could take. And I said, there was a veterinarian on the team that sent the first chimpanzee into outer space. And his name was Jerry Finnig, and he actually was a Texas A&M graduate. And when I got to Texas,
No way.
to say, you exist, you really exist. So yeah,
That's amazing.
you can cure cancer. You can, whatever you want to do in this profession, you can do it. I think one thing that disappoints me a lot, though, is that, at A&M, I spoke to the pre-vet club every year, and there were nearly 500 students. And the first question I always ask them every year was, how many of you have been discouraged about becoming a veterinarian? And every hand went up but 5.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I ask them, who discourages you? Veterinarians. And I don't know why. I just don't know why. It's very disappointing. And so what I tell every student, I try to talk to every student I can who wants to be a veterinarian. And I said, all right, here's one thing that you have to do. You have to not listen to anybody who tries to discourage you. This is your life. And you say, thank you very much for your interest in me. And then you go on and do what you want to do. And if you decide not to be a veterinarian, that's fine. But don't let anybody get you off your path.
Yeah. I wonder if you look at other industries, if it's the same.
I
Like
don't,
the grass is always greener,
I don't
you
know.
know?
I don't know.
I know. I don't either. But it's an interesting, like everybody always wants what they don't have. And I wonder, we work so hard to get to where we are. When you graduate, if you stop setting goals, stop striving for joy, like I feel like you have this goal in your mind the whole time of like, oh, I'm going to get to be a vet and then I'm going to be happy and I'll be fulfilled. But like, we're not designed to just hit a stone and then stop. And so if we forget that, like, it's still every day is a choice. Every day is a choice to show up and either enjoy the thing we're doing or not, and then make a choice to then get out of that or try something new and different so we can keep chasing. It's all about what is that saying where it's like it's about the journey, not the end point or whatever?
It really is.
Yeah. And I think we just lose because we're so goal oriented and our final goal is to be a vet. We just don't, there's nothing after that unless someone's talking to you about it and is like, well, what's next? One of my overarching missions, I want to change that narrative. I want people to be proud that they work in veterinary medicine. And I had many people discourage me as well. They said I wasn't going to make enough money. I was a woman, that was still a thing that was happening when I was going to school, which was only like 10, 15 years ago when I was applying.
Yeah.
And it was like a woman told me that, right? Like she was like, and I think she maybe was in the mindset of back when she was thinking about being a veterinarian potentially, but it just was like, it was unbelievable. And I actually didn't go into equine medicine because I had equine practitioners, one that were like telling me not to do it, but also they were miserable. Like you could see that their work, like they weren't enjoying it. So it's just, we have got to change the narrative of what's going
I think
on.
we
And
do.
I know there are people that are happy, like myself and you,
Yeah.
who are loving it. And Dr. Danny McVitie and like,
Yeah.
so many people that are loving this profession and they're not talking enough. When you think about the future of veterinary medicine, our beloved profession, I know we've just got kind of on this negative train, but what's exciting you the most about what's coming down the pipeline?
I think one of the most exciting things for me are the innovations, the technologies that can help us. The mindfulness about our wellness in conjunction with all of that, I think are very exciting. There's this saying, let's see if I can get this right. I might get it wrong, but something about in the world of change, the learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists.
Whoa.
And so I think that what excites me is the opportunity to stimulate, motivate even one mind to prepare for the future and to make sure that this profession, not only survives but thrives into the future. Yeah. And then there's another one that relates to the adaptability too. And this is another one. Let's see, something about the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. How about that?
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think about in the future. We have got to learn to relearn. And that's another
Yes.
important part of adaptability is not just learning, but relearning, because that's hard.
Yeah. And being okay with failure so we can get to that point,
Well,
right?
fail fast, fail often, and that'll get you
Yeah.
ahead faster. So and I think that's something else that we need to make sure students know is that failure is one step more towards success. That's
Yeah.
another thing I wanted to do at Lyon.
What?
No tenure to reward risk taking and creativity and trying rather than
How?
giving publications, rewarding risk taking for people to try new things.
How do you reward that?
The tenure process requires a lot of how many publications and how many of this and how many of that. And if you don't have tenure, you can still come up with performance evaluations that can take into account what projects you took on and how you tried to make change and what I tried AI in this, it didn't work, but I tried it. Learned that didn't work, so we can put it somewhere else and try again. And I think that's where a lot of the new changes are going to come is through the willingness to take risk. But imagine creating, and this is another goal for Lyon, was imagine assembling a lot of very forward-thinking faculty who are risk takers and putting them in one place and unleashing them.
Mm-hmm. No, it'd be amazing.
And I was at another university. I was department head, and I had one of the faculty members come in and say, "Look, she had a PhD. She was an equine internist, but had a PhD in microbiology as well. And that is when West Nile virus hit the Northeast, zoonotic disease, but also a novel disease for us. And she said, I want to study West Nile virus. But she said, people are telling me that I shouldn't because the results won't be certain. And I need to get tenure first and then I can study it. That's what tenure can do. See?
Mm,
So you have to do something that's sure so that you can get
yeah.
publications. And so she said, what do you think? And I said, I think you're perfectly positioned to go for it. And if you don't,
Yeah.
you won't be in the same position after you get tenure. I said, go for it. And I have no doubt you'll be successful, but this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And she did, and she became one of the national experts in West Nile virus and equine. And, but that's the kind of thing that can throw cold water on a young person. And I don't want to throw cold water on young faculty and investigators. I want to unleash them.
Yeah, you have to find different incentives. I know on my smaller team basis, we reward innovation. We'll throw a problem at the team and like think of ideas to try, and we make it okay for them to fail at it. And the goal is to find something that makes their lives better. Like we want a solution to the problem that makes everybody happier. And so the reward is intuitive because it's them getting to a better position for themselves and like the process and making it
Yeah.
the day easier for everyone. But I wonder, I don't know if it's like financial incentive, if you're replacing tenure with some other incentive to get people to be willing to do the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, what that
Yeah.
would look like.
So what we would do is that what it would be was rolling contracts. So right now in a tenured situation, you come in and you only get an annual contract. So if you don't do well that first year, you can say, "Well, we're so sorry you have to go," and
Oh, wow.
in the contract. So even in positions. So then after you get tenured and promoted to associate professor, then you have tenure. So what I thought could work is rolling contracts. And what that means is your first year, you get a 1-year contract. And then when you are, quote, promoted to an associate professor, you get a 3-year rolling contract, which means that every year you get a new 3-year contract. And so you're
Mm,
guaranteed 3 years. And then each year it goes 3 more, 3 more, 3 more. And if you aren't doing well, the 3 goes to 2, but you still have 2 years to fix it, right? And
yeah,
so it's enough flexibility and enough accountability but enough security as well. And then when you get full professor, it's 5 years. And so it's a
nice.
whole lot of job security and yet, and
Not permanent.
yeah, it's not,
Yeah,
yeah, but there's flexibility in it. And so I think that's the answer.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I have two more questions for you.
sure.
My first question is around this idea that veterinary professionals are leaving the profession, like they're getting burnt out and not staying in the profession. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it saddens me that people leave. There's no doubt about that. One of the things that the AAEP did was they started this whole retention program and tried to look at what they could do to retain people. And one of the things that they did was that they brought together people and they talked about internships. And of course, at that time, everybody's, well, you don't pay them for internships because that's when they learn and they're supposed to work hard and they're supposed to, stay up all night and that sort of thing. And what they had was they had focus groups with students. And when they heard the students, they said, oh my gosh, we get it. And so there was one person in particular who couldn't get an intern, but he shortened it to 4-day work weeks and increased their salaries, and he filled up all of his internship pool. And so
Wow.
I think we have to constantly think, we got 5 generations in the workforce right now, and we need to think about what the newer generation wants and needs balanced with what a practice needs. So it can't
Mm.
just be, I mean, somebody's got to make some money along the way, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's conversations. And so, I think the young people today are amazing. So I think what we've got to do is think about what can we do in our profession that fulfills them? Well,
Mhm.
couldn't we use AI to make their work week better and to give less stress and use technologies to make their job better, more fulfilling, more exciting? They're digital natives. The young people being born today will never know a world without AI. Think about that when we start thinking
That's
about
crazy.
students. We've got those are the students we're going to have to teach, and we can't teach them the old ways, and we
Right.
treat them the old ways. And that's where we've got to bring these generations together, and we have to help all of them understand each other. And yet, it's not all the older generation understanding the younger generation. I think the younger generation has to understand the older generations as well. But it's about communication and it's about aligning the goals. So I think if we do things that can make veterinary medicine more exciting for young people, that's one thing. And I think technology is just one way to do that. I think if we understand that they don't want to lose their families like a lot of people did. I mean, you look at some of the older veterinarians, they didn't even know their kids and they work so hard that they didn't even know their families. The younger generations are saying, wait a minute, I don't want that. Well, how can we fault them for that? We've got to find ways to be creative with that. And there are many ways to do that with 4-day work weeks and even shared positions or, whatever. But there are a lot of ways to do that too. So and then I think if we think about things like adaptability quotient and we help them be more adaptable. So anyway, I think we've got to take care of their mental health as well, find ways that they can be fulfilled in this profession and that we listen, but that they don't live in a ditch. We got to help them not live in a ditch too.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like I said, the attitude, I mean, to help young people develop that positivity where they can attack change in a positive way, they can attack their problems in a positive way. We've got to arm them with some ways to do that because we're going to have problems
Yeah.
every day. I spoke at the conference one time, and one thing I did was the night before I went around and I grabbed all the young people and I said, "Tell me about veterinary medicine and what do you think is the best thing about it? What do you think is the worst thing about it? What would you change one thing if you could?" You know what bothered them the most? And
What?
you won't be surprised about this, but they felt like they're not appreciated by their clients. They get all this education,
Ugh.
they have all these abilities, and then they don't see people appreciating them. And so I dug more deeply into that, and they could have 100 successes in a row, and then they get one client that just reams them, puts them on social media, and their life comes to an end. And I think
Ugh.
that today's world is more challenged with the use of social media when people put things like that up. They have to have support knowing that one person shouldn't change your life. You can get cards and letters rolling in and you can get gifts. And like my father, you could have people coming and giving you all these things that are appreciative. And then you have one like that ends up on social media and your life's over. We have to help people frame that in the right way. Our son is athletic director at the University of Louisville. And in athletics, people are very willing to express their opinions. And we asked him one day, we said, look, how do you deal with all the social media stuff? And he says,
Yeah.
I don't read it. So don't read it. If it's going to bother you, just don't read it. But I don't know if that's the right way, but we've got to help them come to terms with some of those
We
things.
gotta have boundaries. Yeah. Like I mean, I think it's just a lesson in like if you know what's gonna trigger you and keep you from being able to move forward,
Yeah.
then we've got to be able to create healthy boundaries around that.
Yeah.
And I do think that as cancel culture and social media become and like
Yeah.
half the time we don't even know if it's real or not anymore.
Nope.
It's having less weight now, I feel like. And so what used to be really daunting and like a negative review, I feel like just doesn't have the same weight as it used to because you're like, if it doesn't have some negative reviews, I feel like it's fake. Like so they probably paid for all these positive reviews. So I think people look for authenticity and seeing a little bit of this, like, okay, you're never going to make everybody happy. We understand that. And everybody's got opinions. But if the overwhelming majority is supportive, then this feels real and like something I could get behind. And I think that we're getting like I often wonder, especially with the younger generations growing up with AI, like you said, like they're going to know it their whole lives. I think they're going to be savvier to it too. It's not going to be as like you are already seeing them pull themselves off of social media. We're getting smarter about not allowing social media as they're developing. So I think society is adjusting for how insane it got.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But just imagine in your practice, if you have 20 people. I think another thing is, again, asking people's opinions, but doing a lot of checks. How are you doing today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Celebrations. Somebody got flowers
Yes.
and he celebrates the fact that this client acknowledged them. Ooh, look, we got this. But
We
do
did
a lot.
something for the first time. Yeah.
We did something the first time. We had a very successful case that was very difficult. Find a lot of ways to celebrate. And that doesn't mean going out to dinner every single time or giving an expensive gift. It just means, again, if you have these frequent meetings of some sort, you could say, you could share those things. I know one thing I used to do with the kids when they were younger that I thought was really fun is, what's the best thing that happened to you today?
Yeah.
And you could do that in a practice. What's the best thing that happened to you today?
Gratitude rounds at the end of the day.
And is there anything that I can help you with?
Mm-hmm.
So you send two things is, let's keep thinking about the good. And if it's not good, we can help you. And I don't think we need to say what's the worst thing. I mean, maybe you could, but you could.
Yeah.
And what can I help you with, so that you're sending the signal that we're here to help you through any tough times too.
That's a really good idea. I might start doing that at the end of the day and
Yep.
just being like, for whoever's like closing with me, what was the best part of your day? I love that.
Yeah.
Dr. Green, what haven't we talked about today that you wish we had before we close?
I'll tell you something that really had an impact on me that I've made sure that I do for other people. When I was at Mississippi State, a very young veterinarian trying to be the best equine veterinarian that I could be. We had a veterinarian come from England, from Liverpool, from the University of Liverpool, as a visiting professor for, a year and a half. I really hadn't been around anybody of that caliber before. He was, internationally known, and he was just terrific. He became just a very, very close personal friend. And a great sense of humor, that British wit that just cracked me up. And so I just adored this man, adored him. He is the first person who ever told me I was good. And I thought, wow, again, I carry that with me the rest of my life, that one comment. And so I've tried to do the same for others. And I remember there was an intern at the University of Missouri who was fabulous. He was great with clients. He was a great teacher. The clients loved him. He published more publications in his 1 year as an intern than a lot of senior faculty did. He just was fantastic. I told him how good he was, and he said, "You know what? You're the first person who's ever told me I was good." And so what that said to me was that, find the good and praise it. If you see something that someone else is doing, don't assume they know they're good just because they are so good. You would think they would know, but try to elevate people and try to point out where they're good. And it's amazing how meaningful that will be for people. And it sure meant a lot to me. So I guess I would leave people with, your success isn't necessarily your own. I think the most powerful success you can be is by reminding others that they belong there too and that they're good too. And I think that's a very important thing that we should do in our lives, is help others.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's so powerful. You, Dr. Green, you've changed so many lives and have made an incredible impact on the profession. And I know you're not done. Like, I can't wait to see what's next. And the way that you have just followed your instincts and pushed forward when everybody was telling you not to. I talk to people about you all the time because you have faced so much in your career, including not getting into vet school the first time, and have still just continued to be as successful as you are. And that is something that we all can learn from. Like, it's just incredible to see a woman who has made it as far in leadership as you have and has made the ripples in the industry that you have. And I appreciate you so much. I appreciate this time you gave me today to kind of talk me through what that experience has been like for you. You've given us so many great nuggets of things that we can take forward with us, with ourselves in our lives. And I just really appreciate you being here. And thank you for just the impact you've had on my life.
Well,
I really
thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
And thank you for being
Yeah.
you, Brianna, because you have to give yourself credit, because you are enormously successful as well, not only as a student, but also in your professional life. So pat yourself on the back a little bit too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Choose People Love Pets. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe to support the show. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, we hope you'll share it with them. Thanks for being here. This is Choose People Love Pets.